Hello, welcome to today's edition of the Citizens Chat on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, the chat is discussing the state of political parties ahead of the 2026 general elections in Uganda, but also later in the show we shall discuss a bit about Lubowa Hospital, the monies and the construction and the status of that particular place now. Helping us in those conversations is a panel of distinguished Ugandans whom I will introduce. Starting from my extreme left, the Honorable Ochieno Joseph from Uganda People's Congress. Honorable, you're most welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. Sad to be discussing the state of political parties. But it has to be.
Thank you. Next to Honorable Ochieno is Dr. Bireete, the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, Uganda. Doctor, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
And on my immediate left is Dr. Robert Ojambo, Head of Department of History and Political Science, Kyambogo University. Doctor, you're most welcome.
You are welcome. Good evening, viewers.
Thank you. Political parties in Uganda. I'll start with you, Doctor, who is a lot in the politics from the academic side. In your view, what is the state or the status of political parties in this country called Uganda?
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe before I begin with the political parties, I just want to send my condolences to the family and all those who are known to Dr. Max Ajang, who passed on this morning. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Political parties, to understand them today, you have to understand where they have come from. Political parties was not an African way of running things. It was introduced here at the time of independence by the colonialists. Of course, political parties had started in Europe after the Great Depression mainly, as avenues to try to fight for interest groups. They mainly came from trade union issues, where there were a number of issues after the war. There was child labor, there was unemployment because industries had been destroyed. So we started getting political parties beginning in Western Europe, and they spread to other parts of the world. In Uganda, the first idea of a political party started around 1930s, when there was that struggle between the system of land control in Uganda, where there were landlords and then tenants. If you can remember the Batakabu and the struggle for land in Uganda mainly. But it became intensified in 1950s to begin with the Uganda National Congress of Ignatius Musazi and his team. They used to call it the Group of Six in 1952. And that political party was for, and that's what I want to say, political parties normally come for a certain purpose. At that time, political parties were to fight for sovereignty or, in brief, independence of Uganda. But the likes of Musazi were so much even of African sovereignty. You know, Musazi was a Katwe man who were in the suburbs of Kampala, or Chibuga, what they used to call in Luganda, Chibuga Chomudugavu. So they were really struggling for African sovereignty in 1952. So that does not really grow into a serious party, but they managed to deal with it. And it then, that now broke into two, or not even, if not three. Of course, the Uganda People Congress breaks away from that. And this is mainly for people who think Republican. They want something called Uganda, which is not based on kingdom or any other thing. And of course, orchestrated by the likes of Dr. Milton Obote. Of course, by that time, they had not yet given him the title of doctor, and other people. And there are a number of, for those who may not know, even in Uganda here, there are some people who thought of a Republican thing than having just the kingdom. Then, of course, there came the DP. That was 1960. Now we are talking about 1960, the early 1960. So there came the DP, also in 50s, but also climaxing in 1960. And the DP was sort of fighting for, these were people who had been marginalized. And they had been marginalized because of Uganda being a protectorate of the British. There was a feeling that a group of people, mainly coming from the Church of Uganda, had benefited a lot. And those were the ones now who had been in the Uganda National Congress. So there was a group of people, especially laborers from Makerere University Engineering Department, but one of them being Kasolo, who came up with an idea that they needed a party that would promote the worker, a worker. So DP begins like a welfare thing for the worker, but mainly looking at workers who are not of Uganda, who are not of the Protestant church. So they formed the party, and the Kasolos start the process in 1954. By 1956, they have a political party. Then the third one was the Kabaka Yeka, which was now for conservative men in Uganda who wanted nothing but independence with Uganda as a nation. So that's how political parties began. So that is one group of political parties. One, the other one is for sovereignty, and the other one is for a republic, and then the other one is for sovereignty of a certain group of people, but mainly welfare, a social welfare thing. And that's why DP has that mentality of social democratic mentality, and UPC had that of Uganda being a nation of one people, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, this does not, the conditions then do not allow this to materialize. Of course, later, Kabaka Yeka is swallowed in UPC, and the DP is somehow isolated and pushed or boxed in Buganda, where the leader is not liked in Buganda. It is a very ironical party. Bendikito Chiwanuka. Bendikito Chiwanuka had a lot of support in Uganda. But in Buganda establishment, what people may not know, there is normally a difference between Buganda and Mengo. So this Bendikito Chiwanuka was not popular in Mengo, but he was very popular in Buganda. So he's boxed into Buganda, and the people started calling it also Dinia Papa, that it is a Catholic thing. So even outside where it went, it was for prominent Catholic politicians in Acholi. It did very well in Acholi, parts of Busoga and so on, but it did not manage to galvanize the support around the country. Then Kabaka Yeka was swallowed up by UPC. Many people crossed into the UPC, including the leader, who became the vice president. Of course, he was leading from the background, but he had people like Kachama Abu Mayanja, who becomes a very strong UPC steward, and so many others. Then that group left. In 1980, parties get problems. By 1966, parties get problem. 1980, now parties had changed their cloth. UPC, DP, and others are now struggling for leadership. So this idea of parties being vehicles of common purpose or special interest starts in 1980. Then the DP and others are there. There is CP, which is conservative. I've tried to analyze this, but I've failed to understand it because I don't even know what they are conservative about.
Which one?
Conservative Party. I've failed up today. I don't understand it. It is not very close to Mengo. It does not come out clearly on certain things which are being raised by DP and UPC. So I think they just wanted to buy the name. It must have been a copycat of the Conservative Party in Britain. So at that time, parties now transit into special interest vehicles. People start joining parties because they want to achieve a position. So they would look at a place like, for example, if you looked at a place like Jinjaruro, that's how they used to call them. They discovered that the people there are good supporters, or they can understand DP, the MP became a DP supporter. Of course, the worst was in 1986 when the NRM came to power. The first thing they demonized were parties. So NRM started painting parties, that parties were sectarian, parties were, which I've done a lot of research. I don't find them that they were very sectarian as they tell us. Because I found out that, for example, Sevana Kizito was a strong DP man, but he was not a Catholic. And so many people may have not known. So there are people really who are very strong in political party who didn't go there because of sect. But the idea, social justice, if you listen to Sevana, every time he would tell you about social justice. So for me, I think the parties lost it when they were now used as something to gain or to make popular the army. So the army became now a replacement of parties. For example, UPM, Uganda Patriotic Movement, is just a party because the law then said that for you to stand for election, you must have a political party and therefore have MPs in the whole of the country. So Fronasa, which was Museveni's military feat, turns itself into Uganda Patriotic Movement. And that is what later joins with the movement of this professor, forgotten his name, Professor Lwero, who was the chairman of movement, and they formed that movement party. So movement is a camouflage of a military outfit looking like a political party. Then, of course, the FDC's Forum for Democratic Change, the ones which have come recently, are more or less pressure groups. They don't have a real feature of political party. And therefore, in Uganda now, as we talk, there is nothing that you can point at, and it's a pure political party, like the African National Congress is in South Africa, or Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania. In my view, those are the only two surviving political parties that have remained in Africa and have continued with the characteristics of a political party. They run structures of a political party, and they operate as a political party. In Tanzania, I am sure Suluhu Hassan is not stronger than CCM. If today CCM decided that Suluhu Hassan should leave, he would leave. In South Africa, I think you have seen within ANC, it is obvious.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, so in Uganda, really, we have pressure groups. We don't have political parties.
Thank you so much. Doctor dismisses the existence of political parties in Uganda. Dr. Sarah, I want to come to you. One of the things that come out from the historical, perspective Doctor gives us is the environment in which political parties since 1930, then 40 and 50 came about. This environment, when you look at the political parties that he dismisses, is it the environment that makes them irrelevant? Like he may want to say, oh, it is the people not being up to task in these political parties.
I think it's a combination of things, and since our historian has clearly elaborated the history of political parties in Uganda, I want to look at political parties vis-a-vis democracy that we have in Africa. I know that there's a growing school of thought that maybe this thing called democracy is not ours. But what is ours? If you go to the traditional governance systems, mainly I will look at kingdoms and chiefdoms that had organized setup of governance and institutions, you had the Ruchiko or the council. In modern democracy, you can link the Ruchiko to a parliament, except parliament now we can vote why they don't have the power, similar to that of Ruchiko. The character of parliament, but the institution of parliament mirrors the functions of the Ruchiko, the council, in the traditional setup, which is still existing in our kingdoms. When you look at the council of elders, because other than the Ruchiko, then you had elders. In our case, elders could be the heads of the institution, the arms of government. In our modern, I'm trying to mirror the tradition versus modern. I think the council of elders, for lack of a better structure to compare, I want to compare it with the leaders of the three arms of government, because that is now what would be below or immediately next to the king. In our case, we have a president or the head of the executive, others call it prime minister. So the thinking that this, what changes then is how these leaders were chosen. The traditional setup looked at character, looked at values, looked at standing of a person in society. In our case, the people who occupy these institutions are, for lack of a better word again, mafias with the biggest capacity to manipulate society. So the nature of how we select leaders has been so distorted to the extent that you must be the mafia, the biggest mafia in the game, to come on top. You have manipulation of elections. You have weakening of institutions for those who are in the seat at the top. You have the killing of the aspects of checks and balances, the parameters that hold democracy together, whether traditional or modern, are for active citizenry. How engaged are the people? The second element is rule of law. Traditional setup had unwritten laws, but they were known to society.
You could not break them.
And nobody could break them. Even while they were broken, that's why you find people were banished from that community. Then you don't belong if you are not bound by the values. If you're not bound, these are the laws that held the traditional society together. In the case of a modern society, we have the written laws. In the case of our common law, doctrine, we have the written laws, the constitution, the acts of parliament, the regulations, the policies. These should replace the values that existed in society, that held society together, that guided society on how everybody should conduct their affairs. The third element is you have active citizenry, you have rule of law, then you have the mechanism for checks and balances. I shared what existed in the traditional setup, the Ruchiko, the council, whatever name you call it, then the council of elders, the team of elders, who would now sieve. In the case of lower parliament and upper parliament, like in the US system where they have the House of Commons and the Senate, then it's the same. Basically, what is different is the character of the people in these institutions.
Sarah, let me just give you an obvious checks and balance that many of our viewers may not know. In Uganda, to check the masculinity of men over property and a lot of things, the heir in Uganda is chosen by the sisters. So if you are in a family, it is not the father, it is not the mother, anybody, but it is the sisters who sit and choose amongst their brother who should be their heir. So that at the end of the day,
and that's transparency.
Yes, there is transparency and there is no domination. And in most cases, they want to choose the one who can easily protect them.
Yes, and the legitimacy
Yes.
of that constituency. So the fourth element are independent and efficient institutions to make sure that then everybody is checked according to the either written or unwritten laws of that country, society, or community. So in my view, what has changed is the character of the people in these spaces. It is not about whether the system is foreign or it's the character of the people. And the question for those seeking answers about democracy that they need to interrogate is what has distorted the character of human beings, of us as a society.
What would that be?
Of course, the obvious thing is lack of morals, lack of shame,
Greed.
You see,
and
Doctor,
impatience.
when you mention things like character and values in the traditional setting, the modern person expects that education tries to build on that. He expects
It
that.
also takes away. Education is more useful to a person with character. I know there is one educator who used the notion of one educated fool. But you know, you can go to class, yet you pass, but the caliber of your personality makes you equal to something like that. It's a difficult explanation.
No, I normally tell people that education is like sharpening a panga.
Yeah.
If you get a panga made up of aluminium, however much you sharpen it, it will never cut like a panga made up of steel. So education is like sharpening a panga. So if you find a person who is like aluminium, even if you sharpen, you hammer like this, it will just bend.
Yes, so having given that comparison and background, I want to come to the nature of parties today. What environment are they operating in? Parties under, now I'm going to our written laws. Article 38 of the Constitution provides that citizens can participate in their governance, either through civic or political organizations. So I know here we are in the civic space, as the names suggest. So we are operating in our governance through this civic space. The political parties are supposed to be vehicles for citizens to participate in their governance. How do they participate? Parties are held, most important and entrenched, through a social base. A social base of members that can determine the activities the party should do. Members that can fund their parties. Members that can hold their leaders accountable. This social base in Uganda does not exist. One, because of poverty levels. Even people who are interested in participating through political parties do not even have money to pay for membership. And most of these parties' membership is free, or basically nominal, 1,000. What can you do with 1,000? In some supermarkets, it can't even buy a bottle of water anymore. So you find 1 year, what you are contributing as a party member is 1,000 shillings. What can you do? So the second issue now affecting parties, other than the absence of a social base, is character of leaders. We can look at why parties are breaking up and why they are dysfunctional. It's lack of leadership. Look at Joe's political family, UPC, it has two factions. One joined NRM without properly taking a seat at Chadon. Another is at Uganda House. And there are those that have captured Uganda House literally. So you have those that are using the state to even take over the party structures. In modern democracy, when you form an alliance or a cooperation with a ruling party or join the reform government, like the coalitions in modern democracies, for that period, you are together. It's not being neither here nor there or being in two places at the same time. When your parties form a coalition to form government, they serve in that government together for that period. When the coalition breaks up, they inform their political base that they have left the coalition. But for the period they are in a coalition, they are together. So if UPC and DP were in a coalition or cooperation, it would mean addressing their weekly press conferences jointly at Chadondo. It's not being at Chadondo and being at State Hall. It's not being at Chadondo and being at Uganda House. No. So that means that they are neither here, nor there, and they are cheating the population. The other character of people in political parties is what has happened to FDC. FDC has divided. I think the majority are now on the streets for Katonga faction. If you compare numerically, the people at Najana Nkumbi today and the people in Katonga, majority are in Katonga. Why? Character. Lack of principles. Greed. Name it. The things I have explained. The difference between the character of leaders that operated in traditional systems and the character of leaders today. Look at Parliament. Why isn't Parliament working to the expectation of the people? Character. What is the character of leaders? What are their principles? What is their philosophy? Look what courts of law. I know the legal fraternity is going through, a big debate, the struggle for the independence of the judiciary. Why? Character. So that is the context we are in.
Thank you, Doctor. I want to come to you, Honorable Ochieno. You see, the two former speakers agree that back in the days we had better people with better character, people that were focused on particular goals, and you often say UPC had those people in the past. What has happened to UPC, your colleagues that you worked with then, or the new ones that has changed them from acting how you used to do to what they are doing today?
We still have very sensible people, and I'm sure there are sensible people across this country, including a few in NRA, not many, a few in NRA, and I ask them to re-examine their conscience as we try to rebuild the Republic of Uganda going forward. That said, I like this business of aluminium and what?
And steel.
Guys who came from the bush, now I know they're made of aluminium. You can educate them and try to sharpen them, bush economics. They get PhDs, Some of them become generals and whatever you think, whatever. They go to the best military academies around the world, then they study top, low degrees with the best techs around the world. They go to the police, they just go and whip people. So NRA guys, now I know they're made of aluminium from the bush. So meaning the bush came to town, like men said, because over a period of time, the last 38 years, somebody comes from the bush with one slippers, like Comrade Rich would say, You give them stiletto shoes. You give them fine suits like mine and fantastic beauty dresses like my beautiful sister here. Fantastic dressings like all the Hispano can present, The guy goes the following day, he does not know. I'm saying without prejudice, possibly the difference between a kitchen tissue and a toilet paper. This NRA guy is mad. Now, that is what has invaded polity in this country. My two colleagues have attempted to make the case, because it's a very difficult case. I think the state of political parties in this country today and in the past is simply that this country fell victim to a bunch of almost, in some cases, mere Boer leading kind of mindsets from the bush. In my opinion, at independence, we had political parties. I'll talk about it very briefly. What really has caused the reason why we're discussing this is because NRA came to kill political parties. But just to give a quick contextual background, the Bataka Party actually was fairly solidly a political party in all makes and formations, to the extent that we created some of our own foundations, like Uganda National Congress and later UPC, from the Bataka. In any case, these guys were genuinely agitating for the real issues that would make formations around political parties globally acceptable. The African personality conscious after the First World War, as Dr. Ojambo is saying, people are seeking to reclaim their spaces, reclaim their identities, seeking to demand for the basic services. People in this country, Uganda in very, very particular case, wanting to assert themselves as Ugandans within an environment which was controlled by the white British and top privileged Asians. Like these days, somebody the other day was asking, I think my brother Semujo asking, who is this Sudir kind of stuff, without prejudice to this, because it's an absolutely an important question to raise, nearly 70 years after our civilization as it was independence. Fast forward to Uganda National Congress. Uganda National Congress was founded genuinely on the back of many of the agitations, including the Bataka Party, and the fact that Africans predominantly their cash crops was cotton and tea to an extent. And these guys are simply saying that, well, they're middlemen, meaning the predominant men, people who push for profit and they eat our money like the profiteering guys in town today. We want to make sure that we're able to produce our cotton, sell them to the respective markets and get fair prices for them, and rather than our money is being eaten up like Shimoni at TTC et al. So Uganda National Congress gets founded around the agitations of basic African rights representations, and then eventually later the case for independence, as Dr. Ojambo rightly says. Fast forward, the DP link. DP link takes us back really to the historical politics of this country, which you cannot put on NRA in a way, but NRA exploited it. And that is really the battle for the Uganda protectorate, as it were. The Catholics and Protestants powers that came in the 1800s sought to push for their control and domination. As it were, because it was a British protectorate, which is a Protestant establishment, the Protestants, by and large, enjoyed a huge amount of privilege across the protectorate, but then predominantly including here in Uganda. And of course, the Anglo-Catholic War that took place here, where the Protestants won. What it basically meant was that the Protestant establishment had huge privilege over a 70-year period. So by the time, fast forward, in 1952, when Uganda National Congress was founded, the status quo was such that the king was a Protestant, the Katikiru must be a Protestant in Uganda, and the Minister for Finance apparently must be a Protestant, and only the Minister for Justice may, this in Uganda Kingdom, may be a Catholic, as it were. So basically, Catholics, where the majority were substantially marginalized, and they had the right to feel out of place. So that's the politics of it, which is basically much more British, and in fact, you could argue religious as it were, the power that they were using. The Catholic establishment, seeing that the Uganda National Congress was founded as a political party led predominantly by Protestants, and as Dr. Ojambo said, rightfully responded, as it were, almost to push as a Catholic-driven interest groups. And you're right, Dr. Ojambo, I've always said that, well, with the founding of DP around those grievances, why hasn't DP presented itself in Tororo with sets of as values, commitments, and aspirations? Simply say that this is our traditional founding values, but here we are with you in Tororo, either pushing for the interests of all marginalized people in Tororo, or you Catholics, or Ochieno of Tororo, because I am a Catholic, this is what should happen. It failed. But to be fair to DP, by the time we're going for independence, they were fairly solid around their Catholic interests, predominantly in Uganda and across the country. But in every sense, they had the identity of an established political party, a right-leaning political party as they associate themselves. Christian or religious parties exist around the world. But if they're religious parties and have that they're the constituents, and they're able to, if you like, articulate the wider issues of the majority electorate so that they get a critical mass that allows them to govern either the country or the counties or perhaps locally, that is fair enough. DP sort of had that, but insufficient for them to govern the Republic of Uganda as a country. KY's formation was really around independence and the realization that DP and UNC, which is later UPC, were political parties that had capacity to govern beyond the Uganda establishment. So KY was basically protest. I mean, if you like, a count back. How do they do it? And inside Uganda, DP had a huge amount of support. Part of the reason for the Chiwanuka thing, which because of the 1966 crisis and 66-67, people sometimes forget where DP was, and the battle, the fact that Kabaka was not necessarily 100% revered political leader of Uganda. But fast forward, at independence, I've said in this program, UPC managed to deliver programs on the basis of its values and aspirations, programs often a government, and programs delivered by a convictionist political party, even its as alliance with the rather conservative KY, did not stop them delivering the best government since independence for the period in which they were. Fast forward really to 1980, I don't think that was the peak of the challenge for political parties. In 1980, and I became a voter in 1980, UPC's articulations were very clear. That's when and how I joined UPC. DP's articulations were by and large very clear. They were just insufficient to persuade me. But this thing came in 1986 when Museveni banned political parties, to use the argument that you refer, that political parties were sectarian, as it were. Museveni came not to push for politics. Museveni came to it in a very primitive way. And that's what they've done in the last 38 years. Now the problem, fast forward, you're raising your hand, is that for the last 38 years, political parties that were established then, predominantly UPC and DP, have been sidelined and broken. Now, the polity of the likes of FDC, when they're now emerging as new formations, they really never had sufficient grounding. But now, in the case of where established traditional political parties are, yes, it is true that because of the longevity of exile of political parties in place, the founder syndrome came in particular, as I said, an element, you could say, partly in UPC, in terms of some of the issues that we are discussing today, but it's about personalities that Sarah spoke about, where politics of me, myself, and I, which is what the movement political system was. So it was about personalities, and then it went to personalities and money, and individual merit, as it were. Where we are at the moment, all of a sudden, political party systems that Dr. Ojambo is talking about, where he referred to CCM and ANC, UPC did not have the opportunity to quickly reorganize, as it were. But being a de facto leader of Uganda Post-Congress, can assure you, actually, we have all the characters of a political party. The only missing link is the important point that Sarah makes, the point about leadership. And Museveni, knowing very well that that is a required vehicle, he had to compromise a number of our leaders, including the other day, poor Jim McKenna and Betty, outing them officially that they're working side by side, not to push for the interests of the people, but side by side to push for their individual interests, which is basically the challenges facing political parties at the moment. Now, unfortunately for the younger voters and the younger viewers today, they're substantially confused because most of them grew up in an environment, including without prejudice. Even someone like my dear sister Sarah just about came to a time, to reach of age at a time when these political parties were not there, and all she could hear was a negative propaganda about them. So people like Sarah must be given credit, that they're able to grow within that time and see the rot-in end and say, there must be an alternative. Now, if Sarah up to this level is this, then you can imagine the younger majority of people, and that's the challenge facing political parties. So it's not been made better by the fact that nearly all political parties, including the political organizations headed by NRA, have got issues. And when you go into the details, it's very much about personality, it's very much about elements of character, very much about the drive for me, myself, and I, it's very much about money. And most lacking, most absent, are critical thinkers that Dr. Ojambo would otherwise want to help. Meaning, I really don't know many out there as political party leaders whom you can see, the man comes and walks around and you see his body language telling you nothing but what we used to call in Makere substance, meaning material. But the woman passes across, and you see the woman is passing across, but everything she's carrying is this convictions about unemployment, youth unemployment, girl child power, crudeness about excess taxation, and the determination that we find that whatever happens in Lubowa, and to translate whatever monies have gone to Lubowa to give hope to children in Tungamo. That absence is the biggest challenge facing us as a matter of crisis today. So leadership, but leadership within an environment in which NRA has created, and NRA which NRA is still.
Thank you so much, Honorable Ochieno, for that submission. I want to come back to you, Dr. Ojambo, here. You did talk about in the history that political parties are, vehicles that came from Europe and Africans adopted them. In your view, when you look at how they've performed in the last, since 1940 to where we are they the specific vehicles we need to deliver democracy to Uganda, to Africa?
Yeah, just to pick up to answer your question, I'll just pick up from her debate. Somebody will say, and I've heard voices say that Africa is not for political parties. What else? How come political parties are delivering in Tanzania, as I said? How come a political party is delivering in South Africa,
Namibia.
and in Namibia, in Botswana, and a few other African countries? But the two are real extreme successes. It's just that political parties have lacked the character of political parties. Because the first thing in a political party should be the ideology.
Yeah.
The political party, if we had a political party that its purpose is to make Ugandan roads potholed, and they insist on that, I would join that political party, because it would have some ideology to push, and you see that we can success. No, potholes. So that they are all over everywhere, even on the roads, even in the airport, and somebody
and
gets to know that this is a big problem,
Yes.
and we deal with it.
Yeah.
The problem is that majority of our leaders don't pass on potholed roads.
Yeah.
I was checking where our president passes.
Yeah.
You can't find a pothole
Express.
there, because he has that special road from Sawaya Queen, what used to be Sawaya Queen, to roundabout, no pothole. If you went to Northern Bypass, no pothole. If you go to Nakasero Road, no pothole.
So he's
I
disconnected.
would really want a party
Is
which has an
disconnected
ideology.
from
So the
potholes.
first thing is ideology. Ideology. Then the second thing to run political parties is the structure. They must have a very clear structure of power. And that power should be with checks and balances, as she argued. Number 3 of political parties is the members. A political party worth its name must have strong members. There are 2 categories of people in political parties. There are members and supporters. In the United States, majority of the people in the United States are not members of the Republican Party or which other party, but they have so many supporters, and supporters keep changing according to the interests of the day. And therefore, the supporters lead you to things like funding. They also lead you to things like leadership. You get them from members. The fourth thing that runs political party is tradition. A political party must have a tradition or a culture or modus operandi, so that when you see it, you know this is this party. The way they do things, the way they run their meetings, the way they mobilize must be tied with a unified thing. And once you have those things, you have a political party. In Africa, what we have insisted on are only 2. Once you have some members, then you coin some constitution which brings you together, which majority of the members even don't understand. I can tell you that in these political parties, if you went to NRM, National Resistance Movement, O0, I don't know whether they removed the O. These days they don't mention it, but that's how it is registered.
Convenience.
That's how it is registered. And you ask, what are the 5 things of your party? You ask somebody. He doesn't know. Just says NRM, party your president is a good party. And many others. And that's why you have seen even these young political parties, please, for young in quotes, like Forum for Democratic Change. There is the other one of Mugisha Muntu is called Alliance for something, and so many others. If you ask them, what is your ideology? They will not tell you clearly. And that's why DP and UPC, they have somehow, I will use collapsed. But there are parties which had some ideology. I told you for DP it was social justice. Social justice, and that is even their slogan, social justice. UPC was to create a Republican state based on social welfare. Social welfare, and that's why they come up with things like Nakivo pronouncements and so on and so forth. So in Uganda, if those things can be structured, political parties would be the best avenues. What else? Civic groups may not be, the issue with the civic groups is that they are spontaneous. Civic groups are normally spontaneous. They deal with one particular problem. Once it ends, another group comes up, deals with another group, spontaneous problem. But a political party, through their ideology, you would see them. You would see the infrastructure in which a party is built, and therefore it can push that for a long time, and therefore become an avenue of struggling for political leadership. So you need ideology. You need proper structures. For example, in Uganda, I was doing an interview yesterday, and somebody was asking me about SEC. You know, it is as if it is a word. SEC is Central Executive Committee of a political party. And he was asking me about SEC of the NRM. And I told him, what is SEC? SEC is as useless as any other structure of that political party. Once the president does not agree with that SEC, that's the end with that SEC. I had a friend of mine, Mr. Ochieno, you will forgive me, wanted to contest for a UPC position in Apache when they formed the Apache municipality. And he went for election. The man wasted a lot of his time. In the evening, the second group of UPC of Akena meet and they say, this is our candidate. So, SEC, like for in UPC, if you are in good terms with Akena, you get a flag. If you are in good terms with the Mugisha Muntu, you get a flag. If you are in good terms with the Museveni, you get a flag. So SEC is not strong. So the structures are weaker than the leaders of the party. They have constitutions, which I talked about, which is part of their institution. But they don't respect them. None of these political parties respect their constitutions. So every time they are breaking, that's why the Ochienos are ever in court. They are breaking the law, and instead of spending a lot of time mobilizing people, they are settling matters in court. Of course, going to court wouldn't be bad, but that's because people don't understand their laws. So political parties in Uganda and in Africa would be proper avenues for democracy. But the problem right now, as I said earlier, political parties have become special purpose vehicles, so that people only go for political party to achieve something. Once he discovers that now I cannot achieve this in NRM, you saw this, I was laughing at this candidature to replace Cecilia Ogwal. There is a lady who has been NRM throughout. She has been contesting as NRM. Now this time NRM did not give her a flag. She went and looked for a Lady Gomez and a Bireete, and now she said that she's a noob. I said, hey, is the political party now like Holy Spirit that you just get it? So are you sure that that person is? Now, the last question I want to deal with, why, somebody would ask, why have other political parties collapsed, this FDC and what have you, and NRM is doing well? In my view, NRM does not have a character.
Just for clarity, FDC has not collapsed. It is still a political party in this country.
It has issues.
Maybe I would need to explain the word collapse. If you knew the FDC of 2005, the other FDC which had just come from Reform Agenda, and you compare it with the FDC of today, it's like comparing an atomic bomb and a pair, these bows and arrows. Bows and arrows. The other FDC of 2005 was an atomic bomb. This FDC of today is a bow of arrows. Arrows. Now, you have to be by chance to kill anybody. So that's what I mean by collapse. I don't say that it has gone away. It is as weakened. It is weak. NRM has always been a government, a state apparatus of government. NRM, in my view, is not a political party. Although Mao used it to call it a political party, you remember his analogy of it quacks like a duck, it moves like a duck, it eats like a duck, therefore it is a duck. Then he was arguing that NRM was the only political party which was saying other political parties should be there. But for me, I always thought that NRM is not a political party. NRM is a state machine of the president, which benefits from the state. It does not have any structure. Therefore, it operates on the structures of the state. It does not have any clear source of funding. It gets money from the national coffers. It does not have any of these things that I talked about, but it depends on the state. That's why it is very difficult to know whether the president is this president, the chairman of NRM, or president of Uganda. Every time he's president of Uganda, camouflaging to be the chairman of NRM. So that has been the only difference. Because for a political party to succeed, as Sarah said, you need a lot of funding. And all these political parties don't have money, except NRM, which uses the national treasury.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sarah, Dr. Robert here talks about a couple of interesting things that make up political parties, and he says ideology, structure, the membership, and the tradition. When you look at political parties in Uganda, I believe we still have people in this country that have the values. We have people, for example, this panel has values, at least for the benefit of our viewer. We have people that can put together these structures, the traditions, and credible membership. What is stopping parties like the ANT, the NUP, Democratic Party, Uganda People's Congress from sourcing these people?
There's another new one called Pilau.
That is not a political party, at least for the record. What is stopping these political parties from sourcing people of value, people who can make sure all these are in place and they compete favorably?
Well, there are, in my view, a few issues. One is the operating environment, the legal framework. The legal framework, when you look at the Political Parties and Organizations Act, it has provisions that affect the functioning of parties, especially in resource mobilization. NRM, first is when the parties were suspended, because I think that was not necessary at all. That was a manipulation of NRM to familiarize itself with society and then find gaps to manipulate. Because they came, operated as a party, put everybody in abeyance to gain ground. Once they gained ground, told the others they are free, and then it remained and said we are also in our corner. Because there is no change in name, in character, in color. NRM party still uses the things that they got from NRM movement. If actually Ugandans today decided that they want to go back to movement system, there is no movement system to go back to. Because it turned into a party. We need even to change our constitution and remove that redundancy under political parties. There is no alternative movement to go back to. Because the so-called movement was masquerading, and when its time came, after 20 years, then it went in its corner. There is no name to go to. There is no color, because the movement was using yellow to go to.
Symbols.
Some symbols are still the same,
This
taken
is
over by the party. No, yeah, but still, what I'm saying is that there is no movement system to go back to. So we need to clean up that redundancy in our constitution. It's causing confusion for nothing. The people who did their game achieved their end. So we need to clean up and remove that there is an alternative system. It's not there. So having said that, then you have parties who were tied up for 20 years, set free. Through a referendum. It was a big fight. The likes of Ranyarari and the Semogeri and others were in court every day for that fight to succeed. Yeah. We need to give them credit wherever they are. So when you set them free, then you say from each funder, a political party can only raise 400 million. How many funders will parties need? Because the minimum amount to have an operational party structure in this country, you need an annual budget of about 5 billion, minimum. Minimum. To have a functional national political party, you need the minimum 5 billion. Each funder, you can't go beyond 400 million. How many funders are you going to find? A party cannot find more than 2 funders. And these are groups of individuals. Yes. Even when you get one funder, the others are away because they don't have similar interests. So that limit should be removed. What you need to check are the sources and the transparency and accountability in the declaration of these forces. But that limit should be lifted. The second issue you need to look at is the way political parties are handled. When recently NUPU was able to do their tours, country tours, it looked like a miracle had happened. Something normal and basic in a democracy. We were discussing it as a miracle. That an opposition party can go to Mbarara and they have a rally, there is no shooting, there is no killing. You come where there is no killing, then we celebrate that this is a miracle. This is a basic need, a basic issue in a democracy. There was no miracle. But that tells you of the environment, the militaristic approach on political parties by the regime. Of course, it goes hand in hand with the state capture. You have the pillars of the state serving one particular group: the army, the police, the institutions of governance. If today, I'm sure Electoral Commission first consults even in a by-election to declare an opposition candidate.
Doctor, that's serious.
No, I'm saying I'm sure. Because of the nature of the Electoral Commission officials, people who can never put up for the, I am sure, and nobody can challenge me otherwise. The last 3 elections, we had no National Talent Center. We had the name and the chairs. And it's no wonder that the so-called National Talent Center was occupied by armed men. The police, the army, the prisons are the majority occupants of the National Talent Center in this country. To provide security. To provide the security or to mark commissioners and tell them they are on gun point. Which security? What is the insecurity? You need to get pictures of our National Talent Center.
Telecenter should be occupied by supporters.
There is only a mixture of the army, police, prisoners, personnel. The mixture are diplomatic community. Tell me the citizens you see in that so-called National Talent Center. 2, you will never see any results that are being tallied. Cheats are brought for commissioners to read. A National Talent Center must have a process where results are coming in, either transmitted via internet or fax, and the agents are able to see that a returning officer's form for Bushenyi district, my area, has come in, and everybody checks with their copies. Is it the one or not? Then you go ahead to tabulate. Does that ever happen in this country? And why do you want me to respect a commission that cannot do basic things required of them? I cannot. So you go from that. So that is the fraudulent system that brings in leaders. And that's why citizens are frustrated, blaming democracy instead of blaming the manipulators of democracy. So from there you go back again to parties, then the social base. In the absence of fundraising, you have an impoverished population. Because look at our private sector. When it comes to electioneering, those that dare come out to join to fund political activities, they must fund the ruling party, whether they support it or not. Why? They are scared of URA. We have seen instances where you dare stand with opposition, tomorrow URA is at your doorstep, they will give you a tax bill that you've never even imagined throughout your entrepreneurial life, and you will be out of business in that year. So that's why private sector either plays with the regime or has no role in politics. Those who have dared, they have, we can take an example of Garuga. Garuga used to fund FDC. The place where the FDC headquarters sit were purchased through him, but first he allowed access. Because at that time, it was even difficult for people to rent. Your FDC rents in your premises, you are threatened by the captured state agencies. And the landlord would wake up and say, you people, you know what? In the interest of peace, here is all your money, please leave me alone. FDC one time rented the premises in Kamocha for the electoral work. They woke up and the landlord said, please, 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 please. I still want to look at my children. And they had to leave. So at that time, Garuga provided that safety because these state operatives would not dare approach Garuga to chase away FDC. And that's what provided stability. Where the other parties are today. No, you can imagine when NUP used the premises of in Kamocha, fire-based Kuru.
The thing had dates.
The thing, you see the Randrango, the artificial Randrangos that were created around the fire-based school, that shows you the context. The unimaginary Rangos, unimaginary claimants. If there was a court appearance, the state would have procured all the people. People go to court and cry how Bobo Wine has grabbed their land. That is the operating environment we are talking of. They are lucky now they are in their home, and they are lucky that even then they had that base. Otherwise, they could not have rented money, space from anywhere. Not because they can't afford, but because the next day that landlord will be threatened to throw them away. So I don't know whether I need to add on the operating environment.
Thank you.
I rest my case.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah, for that really not so nice looking image of the environment political parties are operating in. We are heading into a very short break, and the Citizens Chat Show will be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
You are still on Uganda's leading freedom platform, the Civic Space TV, and this is the Citizens Chat Show. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, we are discussing the state of political parties ahead of the 2026 general elections in this country called Uganda. But also later we're talking about Lubowa's specialized international hospital that has failed to come out of the ground now. Joining me in this discussion is Honorable Ochieno Joseph from Uganda People's Congress, from the Center for Constitutional Governance, Dr. Sarah Bireete, and from Kyambogo University, Dr. Ojambo Robert. Honorable Ochieno, where we left off, Dr. Sarah did a good job showing us the image of politics and how political parties are struggling to survive and thrive in this country. What trick do you have to use in the near future? We are going for elections. Ugandans can't keep saying the environment is bad, therefore nothing is going to happen. What trick are you preparing as participants?
You know, this is television. When you said what tricks, I was now being very happy. I was going to respond to what tricks do we have to get ourselves out of this mess.
Yes.
But then immediately talk about elections, which is just due in hardly 12 months in every sense. I got sort of really mini stuck because it's that close. But that is actually how badly holed up we are as political parties, and particularly opposition political parties. But that said, I just want to put a disclaimer that for all the characters of political parties, I don't know other political parties. I have an idea about them, but I definitely know Uganda People's Congress. And I can tell you in all the 4 counts that Dr. Ojambo gives for the hope of the citizens in this country, UPC particularly, and this is very important, because of its foundations and grounding, we functioned as a political party in the 60s, and we delivered for this country. We functioned as a political party in 1980, between 1980 and 85, and we delivered for this country, notwithstanding the challenges that we had with these NRA bandits in the bush. To the extent that the 4 characters you talk about, from ideology, we grounded on ideology. In terms of membership, we're very clear, but very weak. In terms of constitutionalism and everything else, when it comes to the rule book, we're very clear. In fact, that's why the Supreme Court could rule against the Kenya, because our constitutions, our programs, our constitution is very, very clear. Our structures are very, very clear. They're weak, manipulatable, but they're real. You know, the Supreme Court would not have ruled last October against the Kenya as alleged elections 5 years ago. So that gives me hope that it's really very much about reclaiming our leadership as a political party, and we shall start from somewhere. Now, that starting from somewhere, is it one in which you're telling me that in the event that we're sorted, and very likely I am the president in the next few months, that I'll be able to be ready to guarantee hope for the people of this country in the next 18 months or so? It's very challenging. It's very challenging in part because of the points that have been made by my colleagues, that UPC will be starting from a very, very bottom pit level, going up with the challenges of the absence of a credible electoral commission, very checkered presence of institutions around the country, meaning the judicial systems across the country, where maybe people can go and say that in a patch there are irregularities in the process, and they're able to challenge, and the absence of sufficient citizenry to be alert enough to protect votes, and then find, of course, much more importantly, not only the money that has now been made an imperative element, not money to buy people, but money to facilitate the process, but then most importantly, a collection of all those with the organized opposition leadership to challenge what is in effect really a military state that has been in place for the last 38 years. So that makes it very difficult for all opposition political parties. And that's why I've actually argued, and my colleagues were generally right, to question where we are as opposition. Do we therefore go ahead and very quickly, and it will be my intention to do that as leader of UPC, to push aside my pride while focusing for reviving of the party, but to try and engage everybody else to seek a collegiate effort to open up this crude military regime, and then to waken up the majority of the citizens. That's because that's where power is. In the event that we're able to kill fear, in the event that we're able to reconscientize the citizens of the country, I think the 40 or so million, possibly 20 million Ugandans, in fact, and awakened and tired Ugandans, possibly 10 million of them, recognizing the mess in Lubowa, recognizing the mess that has taken place in every sector of the economy. People should be angry enough in a very organized way to rally around political parties and organizations to put a check and to put an end to this dictatorship. But one quick hope is this, Philip. All the 3 of us go around, television studios, media houses, but we also go to conferences and other spaces. This morning, yesterday morning, I had breakfast with somebody who's almost certainly living a major political party I don't want to mention here, and joining me formally in UPC and joining Uganda Post Congress going forward. So there are people like that. But most importantly, the number of people you meet who are actually serving NRA, but they know that they are there for their monies and their tummies and nothing else, and willing and ready enough to jump ship in the event that there is hope that can be presented as an alternative leadership, gives me confidence that an organized, mobilized opposition, an exposure of Pineti and who really is this Pineti, and an exposure of the shambles of the systems wherever they are, and you can line them from education to health and everything else. I think it's actually possible for the majority of this citizens in this country, believing that it is possible to get better than this, to actually rally against Mr. Museveni. Why? Because today, NRA will never be the same again. I'm concluding this. With the Pilau, NRA, NRM as we knew it is dead. With Pilau, it means that you can see a section of Museveni's units trying to regroup to prepare themselves as an alternative. In fact, a soft landing for remnant element of NRA guys coming. Why?
See,
because
this is a political party. They are doing all they can to keep the power. You can't blame them.
Including abusing the powers of the state, abusing the institution, the constitution, and abusing the ranks of generals. But Sarah wants to.
Yeah, if I may give you some. Yes. I think for me, the failure of NRM Central Executive Committee last week to pronounce itself on the issue of
the
Patriotic
League
of Uganda, which people say is a civic agency. The failure of the leaders to take a decision is evidence that the NRM is dead. Because I want to compare quickly, I know I'm in somebody's time, compare quickly with the ANC, how they've decisively dealt with the issue of former President Zuma supporting the spear of the nation, Nkozibwe party.
Yes.
Clearly, they say, these are our rules. What is written here, please go. No need for discussion. So NRM in this case, because it has a similar clause that was used to suspend Zuma, to say you do not support any other association of any form. I had expected SEC to sit and say, what does our constitution say? Then say, okay, these members who have associated with Perao, can they go and eat their Perao and get enough satisfaction? And show them the door.
But you see, Doctor,
that's what political parties require. Discipline.
Are also part of the Pilau.
Yes, those are the ones that should have been suspended the same way NC has suspended Zuma. That's precisely the point.
Thank you.
So in other words, considering that mess, it tells you that NRA at the moment is a shambolic balloon. The majority of the people whom I meet and interact with don't believe what they say in public spaces. So this thing is being held together by Mr. Museveni, a core of his family, the national institutions, including the army, the police, and the national conference. Anything beyond that is not as you might think about it. As I said, my genuine hope is that many people I meet in NRA cannot wait for a day when Mr. Museveni will go, except they wonder, what is that Uganda that will be...
Maybe briefly, Honorable, what do you think will trigger these Ugandans to do what you want them to do? Because they've witnessed the corruption, they've witnessed the formation of new formations under the NRM. Recently we had an exhibition of parliament, and very many shabby things came out in that parliament. And Ugandans are not acting. What can trigger Ugandans to act the way you want them to
I think it's a very important question. I've asked that question, and if you asked me 10 years ago, I will tell you many other answers, some of which have not come to pass. No, I think what is holding people basically now is fear, patronage, and blackmail. I think another legislator friend of mine talked about why people are going to Pilau, because most Ugandans today, because of patronage and because of this power of money and because of fear, people think Museveni is their mini demigod. So what does the man think? Oh, that is his son. Oh, his son is standing against him But you know, in case I don't go to his son, he will be angry with me. Let me go. And then look, oh, is he calling me back, or has he changed his position? That is what's happening in NRA. So really, the big thing that we need to kill is fear. In as long as we're able to kill fear, and that's why I was trying to talk about making sure that alternative political formations, political parties and organizations come together with a sense of clarity, a sense of purpose, so that we're able to help liberate Ugandans of the yoke of fear, and to make sure that through your medium, that Ugandans actually know that this NRA thing is not as steely as it is, that in anything is basically aluminium from the bush, that you know, it is possible for it to be able to happen, for us to change it.
Thank you.
My urgent challenge is how prepared I am as a leader, and with humility to engage with others, including like yourselves, to make sure that whatever we do not betray Ugandans. Once again, the man in which NRA has.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ojambo, if I come back to you, to deal with the aluminium, Honorable Ochieno got interested so much in. Many people are trying to craft ways of how they can go around this so-called aluminium, but to be specific, the NRM, and one of the things that come out is coalitions. And there are many countries where it works, but the most immediate example is the Republic of Kenya. Political parties come up, people gather, and towards the election, they enter some particular vehicle not identified for the past couple of years, and before you know it, they produce a president. Can that work in this country, Uganda?
Of course, Kenya has not been different from Uganda for a long time. From 1978, when Moi became the president of Kenya, the only thing you'd hear about Kenya was KANU. In fact, the man later got the name Nyayo, and that was the slogan of KANU. So he used to say KANU, Nyayo. Nyayo means one path or one line. Yeah, Nyayo. In other words, Nyayo is when something has passed through a certain place, that thing which is left behind. Yes. Like when people pass in a bush and they go away, that trail they leave is what they call Nyayo in Swahili. So you would say, you just follow that.
Follow that trail.
And you know, Moi had come in as a replacement to Kenyatta, who was the founding father of KANU. And for about 24 years, political parties had tried, including DP, Ford, then there came Ford Kenya, and many others. Ford Asili, they tried and failed. Until when the man left himself, and of course, his living was a negotiated living. Yeah. It was very negotiated after a lot of problems. Because for me, I would want to argue that he would have even refused the term limits. But they negotiated. What people don't know that when Kenyatta died, Moi never went to State House. The house which was for State House was left to Uhuru Kenyatta and their family. So they were next to State House, and that's why it was very easy that Kenyatta would be a president. And the other thing which people don't know, Kibaki was the godfather of Kenyatta. So Kibaki replaces Moi.
In baptism?
Yes, because Kenyatta had refused that his son cannot be baptized. So Kibaki went and picked this young man and took him to the church and said, I am the father. So he was a godfather and a father in the church. So you just want to know the closeness of these people and how they are replacing one another. Kibaki replaces KANU, Nyayo. Nyayo is Moi. Uhuru replaces Kibaki, and so on. But between Uhuru and Kenyatta, and Kibaki there had to be coalitions, which really had to shake. If you can remember, the political parties had failed, so they started forming Orange Democratic Change, ODM, which was for Raila, but even the Rutos were there. You can imagine Ruto and Raila were together at one time. Then, of course, the other one was the Uhuru's thing, which later formed a party, but it was never a party. It was also a coalition of a number of parties. I think 13 of them. The party, the thing that was pushing Kenyatta up to recently. Jubilee. UDA looks like a party, but it's not a party. It's also a coalition of a number of parties. And of course Azimio and so on. So in Kenya it has succeeded, and why it has succeeded is because the Kenyans realized that Kenya, where parties were based on regions, you have a party for a region, and each region has its majority. If you only went on a party basis, you would never get the majority that is required. So you need to form an alliance with another region, with other formations elsewhere, and they did it very well. In Uganda, the problem we have been having is having senseless coalitions. You don't really see what is this person bringing. A person comes and is a political party, a briefcase party, he is alone, some even don't have headquarters, but call themselves the political parties. So they are very easy. In fact, Museveni normally say that let them come together so that it is easy to capture them there. It is easier to look for them other than when they are scattered. So in Uganda, I think now people need to change the method. We need to change methods so that when there is an election like now, somebody should be campaigning in the east, another person campaigning in the south, another person campaigning for Catholics, because people will say that I am promoting sectarianism and tribalism and regionalism. No, politics is an interest thing. If you don't have interest, you don't have a place in politics. For example, if you don't have a tribe or ethnic group to protect in politics, then you are not serious. Because even in Europe, that is what happens. There is a party for farmers. People who are farming, they say for us, anybody who comes. That's why this man is a big problem in American society. Because he appeals to so much interest groups. This Donald Trump, and I want to predict he is going to be the next president. Donald Trump is the next president. It's a bitter fact because he knows how to manage interest. He knows how to manage interests. So in Uganda, we form coalition, but coalitions with which interests? Do we have interests? For example, instead of saying that for us we want federal, so people who are coming here, you must say federal. Why doesn't federal people form a serious party? Then we have another group of people who are promoting, I don't know, trade in the east. Then we have those who are protecting their land around the Acholi, in Acholi. So that when these people now coalesce, they have interest that they are bringing in this coalition,
Doctor,
and therefore bringing people, yes.
I want to ask you briefly, many times in this country when people try to work together, individual A leaves his political party to work with political party B, it is normally considered as either sellout or defection or something of the sort. How should these coalitions...
No, what I am talking about is not leaving. Is not leaving. Is people coming, like what they tried to form under the TDA, although I looked at the spirit of it was not good, because really me, I suspected that person of TDA from the beginning. But you come with your...
Which person? The technical
TDA? The one who was chairing, I have always been suspecting him, whether he's a serious person. Very soon you will I will be relieved of this pain when the next government is formed. So what I'm trying to say is that you don't leave UPC, you don't leave DP and join the NRM, but you come in the NRM with the clear terms. For example, when Mao was going to the NRM, where he is now, what are the clear terms
said he has an MOU
that he can tell us? But that MOU cannot remain his secret because DP does not belong to him. So we need to know that Mao has gone there. For him, he's saying he wants A, B, C, D. Then another one comes, then another one comes. You remain with your political parties. You even sign. You remain as a DP, you sign there. You need to benchmark what happens in Kenya. The political parties remain political parties, but they come with their interest and their share in the political party. If it means ministerial positions, like for example, you see when UDA was forming, Musalia Mudavadi went and said, for me, I want a big position for the Western group. Wetangula came and said, I want speaker. I want speaker. If I join you, I want speaker. Duale said we want to be a ministry. In fact, sometimes they ask for ministry. In Kenya, they are called the secretaries. He said he wants a ministry that can help his people who are cattle people and the aridity there, and so on and so forth. So people came with the clear lines. That's the type of coalition that we want to see. But this thing of just joining together, hey, we want to remove the president, it means that at the end of the day, you are pushing for nothing. And therefore, it is going to be just a source of conflict. But you need a serious memorandum. Number two, the timing also sometimes is dangerous. I have seen that coalitions have started today. Now, if you start a coalition today, by the time we reach January 2026, the coalition will be supporting the NRM because the state machinery will work on you. Then the other thing, as Sarah said, do we have principled people? People who are principled, who will go into the thing. And because sometimes you go into a coalition and things don't work out very well. Things don't work out very well. Are you able to adjust, but with principles? We don't have such people here. Everybody wants, like you see sometimes in the coalition, the biggest problem has been, I come, but I should be the leader. You see, that is one of the problems.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robert. I want to come to you, Dr. Sarah. You see, 2 days ago, the NRM was launching the update of their register, and they claim to have about over 11 million members currently, and over, which means if all those members were to cast their vote in the next election, certainly they will win. But that's not my question. I want you to do a service to our...
I thought they were launching a register to register members.
But of course, they have members. They can confirm that these are already there. That is according to them. Many Ugandans are not members of political parties. And I imagine the reason is they do not know the importance of being a member of a political party. Help our viewers understand the importance of being a member of a political party and the roles they play in our country.
When you are a member of a political party, you are able to take decisions in that party. Decide who leads the party, decide the party agenda, vote for several decisions and policies of the party. But what we need to interrogate more are not the benefits. Because the benefit is participating in the governance of your country, which you can either do through civic or political organization. That's the biggest benefit. What we need to discuss is why are Ugandans not joining political parties? We have about 27 registered political parties now, but about 5 are the ones we are talking about: NRM, FDC, NUP, UPC, DP. About 5, and maybe Alliance 6. The major players, you can add PPP 7, GEMA 8. Yeah, so you can say we have 8 political parties. Very active political parties. Ugandans, the parties need to show cause why Ugandans should join them. Because if I join you today, do I need to get worried where you are going to sell me tomorrow? Because I might wake up and the leader has a paper in their armpit and say they have an agreement. Because I saw when DP, that's it, because for UPC, they joined quietly, the Akena faction. Then later it's NRM who said we are working with UPC. And it came like a rumor. Then later it was confirmed they couldn't deny it, even when they participated in forming cabinet and other government entities. But for DP, they announced that they are in talks with NRM. Later they said they have an agreement. Then we saw the structures of DP. Dr. Ojambo talked about the structure. The structures of DP now denounced the process. The council, the NEC, they said, we are not aware. Then the people who had negotiated with NRM kept trying to remind them, don't you remember the other day? And, and they went to court. The structures went to court. And that case is up for, it has been fixed for April, suing the leaders who went into partnership with NRM. So that is why now, if you are telling people to join a party, do they need to worry every night whether you are going to sell them or not? Or is that the place they should call home? Because for me, in my view, given these trade-offs, it's like dating a prostitute. So if you say my wife or husband is a prostitute, I allow her or him to go on the street and whatever. So do you have a partner? What kind of partner do you have? Wow. Because being a party member is an intimate relationship that must be handled very well and respected.
Being a party member is an intimate relationship that must be handled very well. Honorable Ochieno, briefly in about a minute, what should people look out for to join the Uganda People's Congress?
No, they should quite clearly look at our values, and we are the only political party with a very clear sense of ideology. We are a social democratic political party, and our values are consistent with what we believe in, and our values have been consistent with what we did in UPC 1 government, UPC 2 government, and everything I talk about, including today, what we will do in the future. Meaning that as a center-left political party, would provide public education, public health facilities, infrastructure, would invest in agriculture, would invest in youth unemployment, would invest in the environment, and in all cases, we are a Republican political party that believes in total national unity of our country, and in terms of character, we're a political party that generally, traditionally, including today, we exist in every village in the country, but the issue then was about quality. So that is what you can say about UPC, but I think still, I don't want to give only confined credit to UPC. The challenge is generally that, yes, the rest of the other political parties need to be able to have semblance of those characters. Unfortunately, the rest of the other political parties are neither here nor there, and I don't want to bash them, since there are people who are saying we should be working with them. With the exception of DP, which is sort of ideologically center-right, they presented themselves as that. In fact, their presentation as a right-wing political party, they're actually a contradiction to what Dr. Ojambo was saying. Right now, we obviously have no clue because there are two wings of it. In NRA, of course, it's not a political party. We know that. It's a machinery. It's a thieving national machinery. It's a business. NUP guys have picked on, and this is important if you'd allow me for 30 seconds, have picked on the mantras, almost which is center-left socialist, as it were. But do they clearly articulate these things as programs? It's neither here nor there. FDC guys, for strategic reasons, they align themselves as a conservative political party. What does that represent? What does that represent to the ordinary voters, or ordinary citizens? I don't know. It's quite a huge contradiction. I think the point still takes back to what Dr. Ojambo was saying, and things are to an extent. Where we are at the moment, opposition political parties, is urgent that the leadership emerge in these respective political parties so that we actually deal with these urgent questions we are raising on television, but we should raise it with ordinary citizens of this country. At the moment, Ugandans don't know predominantly why they should join us as political parties.
Again, just very briefly, yeah, sure. In your view, what would be the effect of formations like the Patriotic League of Uganda, the Yellow Youth Movement,
Patriotic
to the
League
NRM?
is a civic organization. Actually, what is surprising about it is seeing government actors launching a non-government organization. Because they say it's a civic organization. Yes, registered as a company limited by guarantee. So the likes of Honorable Tumwebaze, Honorable Kavyanga, it is wrong for government people to participate in activities of forming a non-government organization.
Nonetheless, they are doing it.
It's quite clearly a convenient vehicle to divert Uganda's attention, because I said NRM itself is collapsing. So they would do that. Maybe that's really what I'm trying to say. It's actually very urgent that citizens wake up to the fact that NRA has been taking them for a ride in the last 38 years, and they're taking them for a ride at this material time. What happens to my other colleagues in the other political parties, I don't want to give them advice. For UPC, if only the judiciary would do the needful and dispose of a matter of judicial review, which should have taken 6 months, which is now taking 3 years to next year, we would be very, very clear. And where we're starting as a foundation in terms of a political party, sir, I'm actually quite confident that we would be able to articulate our positions. The relative advantage, for Dr. Ojambo's students.
You would need, if you rescue
yeah.
UPC, you need to dismiss those who are fraternizing with NRA.
I was actually going to come into that institutional systems, in terms of constitutionalism internally, that would be a very urgent thing, and Sarah would do that. In any case, one of the things that I would want to up is the disciplinary element of the political party and organization called UPC. And by Dr. Ojambo, the mess that you see today would not have appeared in the UPC 1 or UPC 2 administrations. So it's actually
we are now on UPC 3.
Well, UPC 3 meaning a post.
Thank you so much, Honorable Ochieno.
About UPC. But I know we're concluding, but it's a very important thing on political parties. It is urgent that citizens of this country get interested in politics and get interested in investigating political parties, whichever they go, but certainly not NRA. So people who are hanging around NRA is a sinking ship. Wake up and begin to challenge the Ochienos of this world and others, and let be the burden of those leaders to tell you why they should join you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Ochieno Joseph, for that submission about the Uganda People's Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I had for the talk about political parties. Now we shift gears to Lubowa Specialized International Hospital. And I'll start with you, Dr. Sarah. Parliament passed money since 2019. 18. And they say the project will cost to the tune of 1.4 trillion shillings. And annually money is released through Parliament, the budget, billions of shillings. And the much we know is that there is no construction going on. What is... I struggle to find a clear position of the hospital, whether to call it a hospital or something. But this project, how does it happen in a country like Uganda?
Well, when Parliament was passing the guarantees for Lubowa Hospital, there was a framework document which stated that the developer would get loans guaranteed by government, and the hospital would be constructed in 2 years, and the developer would use it for either 4 or 5 years and hand it over to government. 2018, it is now 5 years. And we don't know where we are. Every year, government passes money for supervision of Lubowa, but also other monies have been paid for other things other than what was agreed, that totaling 590 billion. Ugandans don't know, and land was given for free for this structure. We don't know where we are. The only thing visible are iron sheets on that structure. There is a picture which was most likely taken using drone technology that shows 2 structures with a blue and green roof that are in a fashion of old classroom blocks of primary schools. So that is all that is there. The rest is grass. Each time Parliament attempts to visit this structure, they are blocked. The most recent being the blocking of a leader of opposition with his team as they were doing their oversight work. And the policeman who was captured on video, policewoman, said, "I have instructions not to allow you," and he will not proceed. the MPs asked her, do you know whether you are breaking the law? She said, yes, I'm breaking the law.
Don't care.
And you will not proceed. So that is the impunity. The impunity in this country. The speaker, in her proceedings, communicated that the deputy would visit Lubowa Hospital on Wednesday.
Yesterday.
I
I
kept,
mean, on Wednesday.
I kept waiting for the so-called visit. I don't know whether her deputy also told her that he knows he's breaking the law, but he will not go. Copying from the statements of the policewoman, because I did not see a report about this visit. So for Lubowa, the so-called investor, Bireete, from getting the deal, I will call it a deal, because for me it seems like it's a money heist and nothing
It's a
beyond
deal.
that. Yeah, it's a deal. But a deal, because in normal business, a deal would be for people to make profit, but also to give a service. In this case, it's a deal to defraud citizens. And after that, getting Lubowa deal, then she attempted to grab coffee. She was stopped. Recently, I saw her mentioned as part of Prime Minister's delegation to intervene in the tea business in my district, in Uganda tea factory. I don't know. I think Ugandans need now to interrogate under what conditions is Bireete in this country? Is she a guest of the president? Is she an investor? Is she a government official? Does she have a work permit? Does she pay tax? Or she's here to defraud Ugandans? And who is hosting her? And maybe go to court and say, we demand that she leaves the country. Because I think she's just here to create more mess than what we are in.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ojambo, you see, the traditional understanding of an investor is someone who will come with his or her money to invest in your economy and make profit. Yes. We have an investor who comes to this country
for shopping,
given land, is going to get a loan using
for
government
shopping from citizens.
using government guarantee. What kind of investment is Bireete making in this country?
Yeah, only that right now we are blinded to see only Bireete.
How many are here?
But there are so many Bireetes in this country. And the governments, and to be specific, I don't want to blame the government of Uganda because I would be in trouble. I want to talk about a person. President Museveni's understanding of an investor really needs to be used to improve economics that students are learning at Form 5, Form 6, and at the university. The real investor is the one you talked about, a person who comes with money to put something which leads to production, to lead to more production of goods and services that can be sold to make profit, because investors come for to make profit.
Usually creating jobs in the process.
Now in Uganda, the name investor, if you define it, if I made to define it, is this middleman or middlewoman who is used to defraud the country, is the one they call an investor. So if you hear about any investor being propagated, not by the government of Uganda, but by Yoweri Museveni, you know it is that kind of person. If you can think very fast, and many Ugandans really are devoid of history, you remember Kananathan. Kananathan, the man who came as an investor to make cotton products for Agoa market at Bugolobi.
Took our coffee
Up
house.
today, people don't remember that man. The man took the land for free. They gave him money. He produced shirts The only person who put on those shirts was the one who had brought him. Of course, they imported a few, but I don't know whether there is any Ugandan who has ever put on those shirts from Bugolobi, other than the person who brought him, because he has bragged that the shirts he puts on were made from there. From Kananathan, we got another investor who was supposed to, but I don't think it was from Kananathan, but another investor came and was supposed to invest in Jagari to produce electricity. That investor moved, things changed until we knew that another person had come and the government had also participated in building that dam. We went on. There is an investor in northern Uganda there who is investing in a factory to produce sugar in Amuru, in Atiak. That investor has been there for a lot of time. For me, who comes from a sugar producing factories in Busoga there, in Mbuyukwe, in Bugiri, in Kamuli. Just people, poor people come together, they go and buy machines, and in 3 months they have put a factory and it's producing sugar. In Mayuge, in Bugiri, in Kamuli, in Kaliro, in many of these places. I don't know whether you have seen any Atiak sugar anywhere. But every year there is a budget going towards that.
I've seen sugarcane growers saying they are demanding for over 3 years.
But that thing, Atiak sugar.
What's the name of that investor again? Investor?
I have forgotten her name, but she's an Ethiopian or Eritrean woman from Eritrea. Somali. Amina something. Amina something. So these investors, when you look at them, most of them come here to defraud government intentionally. And in most cases, I don't know whether you people, you have observed how they get money. They normally get money through supplementaries. In most cases, wherever there is a supplementary, there is an investor. Wherever there is, you remember there was an investor who was supposed to produce vaccine.
Yeah, it was also in a budget.
In a budget. I don't know whether you have heard about those vaccines, whether they are using them to vaccinate children. So in my view, when you look at Bireete is just one of them. It is a syndicate, in my view, which is used by what Malema calls cabals in government to swindle government money. But it seems there is a very huge person who protects them and the one who brings them.
Or they are conduits.
I will tell you, Bireete, let me just give a brief to add on what Sarah has said. Bireete came as a savior to provide $250 million to produce, to make a specialized hospital. What surprised the people, immediately Bireete hired Rocco Constructions Limited to do the project at $70 million. Later they disagreed and Rocco was paid $4 million to get out of the business. Through court. Then they got a Chinese firm which was now to be paid $57 million to do the work. And basing on that, Bireete was also supposed to construct this military thing. But that one, I think because of the sensitivity, she was pushed out. Now, as we talk, Bireete has been disbursed too. Not even now getting loans as it had been agreed, 597 billion shillings. And 597 billion shillings would be really something you can see, you can look at. In Uganda here, a house of 500 billion or a complex of 500 billion is not a simple thing. Just near us, UBTEP is building a 4-storied complex, and when I checked, it is only 90 billion shillings to completion. 4-storied. So what I can tell you is that Bireete and others like him, her, are people known by this government. And these are indirectly people who are swindling money from government coffers. What we need to interrogate now, where does this money go? Because I don't think this money goes in Pineti's account. You think Pineti only does that Lubowa thing. Pineti has a lot of other contracts. I'll give you an example of one. She got contracts to construct roads in Hoima, or the oil zone. And one of the examples, she got a contract to do a road which UNRWA had valued at 70 billion. 70 billion. For her, when she came using government circle, the valuer said, no. UNRWA is deceiving. The thing is supposed to be 270 billion.
So the 200 is for...
And it was accepted. She got the money. The road, she hired a Chinese company. You know, for her, she can't do. She hires a Chinese company. The road is not there, not even a path, but the money was given, and many others. So I think, like the president said, and let's quote him, he said that, leave Pineti to me. I am the one who knows Pineti. People should not continue bothering us asking Pineti. They should ask the president. The good thing, the president of Uganda is the Minister of Finance. According to the constitution, is the head of finance in this country. So people should ask the president questions. Now, parliament has been a conduit. And it is because, as Sarah said, it's a captured institution. Because with all this noise, you are going to see next year in the budget, Pineti being given more money, and parliament will approve it. Like, for example, the supplementary budgets that I talked about. Normally in Uganda, supplementary budgets come when the money has already been spent. And that's why I was telling Sarah that, the Parliament of Uganda is for advisory purposes. It's not an institution which does what they deceive us in the Constitution. And in most cases, there have been debate as if they are going to reject it. They call them in some place, either State House or what, in the morning, the budget is approved. And when the budget is approved, you see the MP's lifestyle continue changing. So in my view, it is not only Pineti stealing from government. Some of our legislators are party, some of our ministers are party, government officials are party, and so many others. So much so that if you put a commission of inquiry today, I think that commission of inquiry may write a report and go with it to jail.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ojambo. Quite a painful submission. Honorable Ochieno, you see in this country we have an institution recently called the Investors Protection Unit, headed by now, I think, Major General Nakalema, who was at the anti-corruption court.
She's a Major General?
Yeah, she was promoted recently, I guess.
Okay.
When you hear stories like the one of Lubowa Hospital and the many others Dr. Ojambo here has talked about, what does it speak to the will of the people in leadership to, produce services for Ugandans?
Who are the people in leadership?
The NRM government,
Headed by who?
President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
The master of Pineti? Mr. Museveni, who's the master of Pineti? Is that the question? Is that the point? Isn't it? Do I need to say anything? Absolutely not. I actually get genuinely worked up on these topics. And it's quite a motive too, because I have other extra burdens of responsibility. Beyond restraining myself and remaining relevant and to lead UPC and to make UPC contribute to reclaiming this country and giving it to the children of this, the grandchildren of this country for whom our founding parents did found. I have extra burdens, and that is experience. I think it's this panel I told the other day that turned out to be the oldest. So I have lived actually through, I went to school in a Minstay. That's when I started primary school. So I've seen what governments have done before. The Obote 2 government that is most accused by this bunch of NRA that are nearly called criminals. You know, Sarah, the things we've just discussed here, my government, UPC governments, have been called all sorts of names. But I just can't imagine 1% of these things being associated with the end of my administration, end of the UPC government. So my point is, how is it that Ugandans have managed to let Museveni and this bunch of almost apparent criminals get away with this? Genuinely, how? So really the topic should not really be about Bireete or whoever. I think it takes us back a little bit to what we were discussing, my child, about political parties, which is basically our burdens of responsibilities. Sarah, we need a mobilization of leaders in this country to be every morning, every afternoon, and every evening banging the doors of Mr. Museveni, asking for an answer about who this Bireete is, what she represents, where our monies are going, and why not Lubowa. I think that's really, really what we need to do. And for me, when I leave this space, I can only do one thing: seek to reclaim younger Ugandans, wake them up, and resolve that we must continue demanding and making sure that we unearth the mess of wherever our billions and trillions of shillings have gone in the last 38 years. My worry is that I continue to guarantee Ugandans that a future UPC government would not seek to revenge, because we never will. But it becomes very difficult, to see a post-Museveni Uganda in which there are no major inquiries and people turn into Luzira, and the rest of the world, in this case, particularly dubious NRA guys, claiming that they're being witch hunted. So quite clearly, I don't see how it does happen without that. And if you consider the figures that Dr. Ojambo is talking about, Dr. Ojambo, actually, a major infrastructure that has an impact is possibly not 500 billions, in the 90 billions. A 5 billion structure actually is a serious infrastructure. A 1 billion structure outside of Kampala on the major cities is a serious structure. So when we talk about hundreds of billions of shillings day in and day out, it's extraordinary. To the extent that the other day, my extremely beautiful sister Anita could go ahead and then appropriate herself millions of Uganda shillings in allowances per day. And it's just written as headlines, as business as usual. I wake up to SMSs, people who think, guys, by the way, I don't have money. I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of experience. I've got a lot of material. But what I don't have is money. I have made lots of money, but I use that money, and I've used that money to campaign to basically expose this thing. People come to you desperately looking for 20,000 shillings. People come to you desperately looking for 200,000 shillings, because even up to today, their children are still stuck without going to school. People come to you because we've got workers whom we pay 70,000 shillings per month. You, Ojambo, and I, in the more distant, particularly in the north and east, people are working for us at 50,000 shillings, 80,000 shillings, 100,000 shillings, and somebody still calls you because their child is stuck, with malaria at a hospital, a health facility, and they want 35,000 shillings from them, and they can't get that money, and they're asking for advance from you. Basically, you're giving them half their pay for a child in the clinic, meaning we are failing to provide basic medical facilities, not for any complications, but merely malaria in public hospitals. Now, my problem is these people, including my worker demanding this, does not know that they need to be able to organize themselves like the Bataka Party people did, so that we actually form a long queue to Entebbe and a long queue to go to where, including to Raki, to say, where is our money?
Thank you so much, Honorable Ochieno. Dr. Sarah, Honorable Ochieno there becomes furious, and I can really feel the pain. But one of the smaller details that come out, which might actually be bigger than what we see, is at a private facility, you have Uganda Police Force in guard, you have Uganda People's Defense Forces in guard, you have departments, counterterrorism, all this mixture of national security at this site. Under what circumstances should the national army, the national police be guarding a private entity?
Yeah, but when you have a system that has reduced these entities into private security like Saracina and others, why not? I think the question that we should ask is to juxtapose events at Ulunguja where a clan elder was murdered, may he rest in peace, and you have citizens chasing the assassins on feet, with bare hands.
And the police is
And
proud to
police-
explain that.
And police is seated around iron sheets and a bush guarding Pineti's route. This is what should make citizens angry. Citizens are chasing assassins with bare hands. And the police and army is seated guarding iron sheets and grass. Shame upon you, NRM regime.
Wow.
In fact, just to add on what Sarah said, those young men in Lunguja are heroes. Because there have been assassins in this country, starting with the Muslim clerics, then serious politicians, including police officers, they have never caught any suspect and showed us that this is the man. These young men, without a gun, not even a catapult, chased these guys with their gun,
Yes.
and managed to apprehend two
Of
and
them.
kill one.
Yes. Of course they are heroes. But they are also on their own.
And maybe
And those are the
that's-
people we need to mobilize and organize sufficiently critical enough for Mr. Museveni to know that for Ugandans, enough is enough. Not for him to be pelted, but for him to be simply saying, Mr. Museveni, just please give Uganda some hope. For you, your children and children's children.
Thank
They
you.
need it.
And maybe
They need it.
from Civic Space TV, we send our condolences to the Kingdom of Uganda, but also the family of Engineer Bossa Daniel Luoma. Our sympathies, and we hope you're strengthened. Dr. Ojambo, how do we get out of here? Challenges.
I have
challenges.
always told you that getting out of here is dealing with the question of leadership. Before we deal with the question of leadership seriously, and we leave this sloganeering and chanting around as if we are mobilizing for a football match, we need to get serious wherever we are, at your own pace, with your own energy, without anybody calling on government and so on, and we determine the type of leaders that we need in our country. The leadership that is there right now, I think it is in extra time, in fact, super extra time. You need young people, you need people who have different ideas. Otherwise, this looting, we are going to loot from each other until we shall start selling some of our limbs without knowing. You sell your limb, and before you know somebody comes for it, then you start arguing with him, but now I'm going to be one-legged. Then you say, but you sold it yourself. So we need to get serious. We need this business of saying that funirawa, that funirawa business is the one letting us into trouble, that somebody comes and gives you 3,000 shillings or 10,000, then you give him the mantle of managing your wealth in a country is very terrible. Because the types of MPs we have, all combined, cannot equal just an MP who was there in 1962.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ojambo. Dr. Sarah, briefly, way forward, how do we get out of this mess? Money being taken out, no one cares, security being abused.
I think we need to redeem our country the way people chase a rat that hides in a hole. Because the chase is on, although there are several challenges. The chase of a rat is on. But each time the citizens are about to capture this rat, the rat hides in a hole, and the citizens cannot enter the hole. What do you do when you're in such a chase? You boil hot water, and power it in the hole, and the rat jumps out, and it is killed. It's time to get back your country.
Wow, the rat. Honorable Ochieno, I hope you don't borrow the analogy of the
No,
rat.
it is quite clearly a perfect analogy, and I don't say anymore. No, Ugandans just need to wake up. Enough is enough. But Ugandans should stop thinking that some funny Jesus is going to do it for them. No, Ugandans are going to do it. Ugandans must also learn, and I think the analogy given by Sarah, somehow I meet, including in our own kind of level circles, people who think that Ojambo has got to give them 100,000 shillings to fuel them to Ntinda before they do it. And there are people who in many cases earn more than Ojambo. No, we need to be able to be prepared to sacrifice. And in many cases, sometimes risk our names and possibly risk our jobs, as many of us have actually continuously done. The challenges and the class that Besigye talks about, these comfortable elite, we are seemingly possibly the worst. Because as I said, I actually get emotional. I got emotional there because of a very lived experience of the ordinary people I meet every other time. You go out of Kampala, whether you go to the north, the west, whatever, you see how people are struggling in the villages. But those people are struggling, dying in ignorance. What about those of us who relatively are in the know? No, people just need to wake up and say enough and enough, knowing very well that predominantly they are suffering because of Pineti, and we know who Pineti is.
Thank you so much, Honorable Ochieno, for that submission, and thank you so much for joining us today for the show. Dr. Sarah Bireete, thank you so much for joining us today and for the submissions. Dr. Ojambo, thank you so much for joining us today and for the submissions. And you, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping Civic Space TV and the Citizens Chat show. That's all time I had for today. Special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for always making this possible. Special thanks to the people behind the machines, Pearl and Malcolm. Thank you so much. From us, we say good evening, and may you have freedom always.